Hello, everybody. We are back on ZEAL, and I'm here with Jemcah and Itlo, also known as Joseph, and I'm John, and we are here today as the co-creators of ZEAL. We're just going to go behind the scenes on this thing and talk about how this ball got rolling and where it is rolling to. So pretty fired up about that. Jemcah, where are you from, and what do you do?
I am originally from Kitchener-Waterloo-ish area, hour outside of Toronto. And then 3 years ago, I moved to Toronto for school. So I go to Ontario College of Art and Design University for drawing and painting. And so I just finished my third year of that program. And so I am an artist. I am a painter, a drawer.
What is your favorite kind of medium?
I don't have an answer. I get that question a lot, but it just depends on what I'm doing, because there's certain projects that require certain media, but probably at like the top of my list of enjoyableness is watercolor and oil. Those are really fun.
Cool. Itlo, also known as Joseph.
Wagwan, my brother.
Can you tell us about your name?
Oh, my name.
How is it that you have two names?
I actually have 4 names.
Okay.
But we won't get into the other names, right?
We can cover the 2 this time.
Yeah, let me just explain. Like, Joseph is not that special,
Sure.
right? It's like a common, like, English, biblical name and stuff. But Itlo, that's actually short for like a name. The full name is Latitlok, right? Like Latitlok. But as a kid, my friends decided that was way too long a name to call like every time. So that they took like Itlo out of the name, right? Which is just a portion of, and I've been called that ever since. So it's Ugandan for whoever is proud to be UG.
Cool. And so you're born and raised in Uganda. When did you come to Canada?
I moved to Canada winter of 2015, so February. Bad time, bros. Bad time. That's the worst.
Yeah. Layering your winter coats.
You survived.
We made it through that, so thanks to Jesus. And I've been here about 3 years and a month or 2.
And what are you up to now?
My days these days revolve around 3 things. Work. I work for like an AV company, right?
It's like setting up sound for venues and shows.
Venues and lights. If I'm not working, I'm self-studying, mainly design. But just life in general, I self-study a lot of things. And if I'm not doing like a self-study as far as design and stuff goes, I'm making music. So like between those 3 things, my time is always like split. Yeah,
and you recently finished a beat tape called Shua. What other projects have you got cooking?
At the moment, I'm mixing a project for my brother before he goes back to school. Well, I had to record and do like all that and produce and all that. It's about 20 tracks of that, coming from like the 30-track beat tape. And another thing, I'm conceptualizing ZEAL. It's in like the developing stage, right? I always develop the projects before I get into working them. And I'm collecting like loops and listening to sounds, and that's also pretty cool.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll put the link for that beat tape down below, and then we'll keep you posted on Itlo's music from now on, because it's pretty sweet stuff. Jemcah, what projects are you going to be working on?
I mean, I'm a painter, so there will probably be paintings. As like a visual person, then I love taking whether it's like verses or stories or element of who God is, who we are, what the kingdom is, and then visualizing them in some way and putting some sort of object or tangible thing to it, and then often that can come out as an image of some sort. But also, like we were talking about before, bringing other people into that, and so wanting to see what other people are creating already. So hopefully getting like photography and different more design stuff, different types of art. So just all of the things. Blowing the box open.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking about all kinds of things, I think, but probably starting out with what ZEAL is, how this thing came about, and then just springboarding off of that, what we're excited about, what direction we hope to go. We've had, with you guys separately and then together a few times, different conversations about, okay, what are we going for here? What is the heart of ZEAL? And I guess that started out, for me, a couple of years ago. Here I am just at school trying to get good grades, good jobs and stuff. And something about that was just not fulfilling. It just did not, it was more empty than full, you know? I was just personally thinking, maybe there is more to following Jesus than what I've experienced. What about something inspiring that, let's say followers of Jesus in China were doing, where, it was just grassroots groups of people meeting in homes, being persecuted, but, persevering. And something about that just really resonated with me. This is not complicated. It's not super bookish, nothing against books. Books are great. But it's like simple and yet amazing. There's something. So what is that? Began to ask people about that, try different things, learn different things from people who seemed like they knew God. In a nutshell, this project is about talking to inspiring followers of Jesus and learning about, how they got to know God, who they know God to be, kind of what they're doing now, like why they are doing it, right? So that is what the last few years of my life has entailed. We started talking about these things, like you and me, Itlo, we met in the end of 2017, and then I just kind of tabled this. How could we do an open, conversation about the question of who God is and how do we follow him? We talked about all kinds of stuff, because we were talking about the global church, radical expressions of faith, and righteousness, justice, and fairness. You mentioned design. How do you make something where the purpose of it is to bring about more of that kind of life? And so that's a design question.
It is.
Any big takeaways for you from that conversation?
I think zeal, the word itself, sticks out pretty well. One of the first things that came to mind, right? You could call the people in Acts zealous about following Christ, and so you look at the lives of Paul and Peter, and these guys go to jail and they're singing praise in jail, and I was like, you could call those guys zealous, but even just going pre-Jesus in the Bible, in the lives of people like David and so going back to the idea you're presenting, is there more, right? The answer to the question, is there more, is yes, there is. Definitely. You just look at the recorded lives of of people that have lived through tough things, things people now complain about or whatnot, but still stood their ground in their faith, and it's purely incredible. The word that sticks out is zeal.
Yeah.
The word itself, the word we're using to to name or give an identity to this idea.
Yeah, and there's in Acts 2 also, where it's these people hanging out, and they're devoted to a lot of things. They're devoted to the apostles' teaching, to breaking of bread, to prayer, a couple other things, and but that word, being devoted to something, just this is what I'm about. This is what I'm gonna do. Yeah. Zeal and devotion have something in common, I think.
One of the things that I know stuck out to me from our first conversation about it was, and you kind of mentioned it, was just simplicity, but also depth, and just looking at that the early church was so devoted and zealous about things that are they weren't complicated. They were super deep, but they were not complicated. It's we're sharing the gospel, we're bringing glory to God, we're praying, and we're loving each other. And obviously it's whenever you're in relationship with somebody, then it does get messy and complicated and stuff. But I think I loved when you were explaining zeal to me, then something that came to mind was just these building blocks of these, laying this firm foundation of this. If we have these things, if we're grounded in these things, then we're able to be zealous, and we're able to go forward, and we're able to go down deeper. We can talk about all of these other different, gray areas in the Bible, or specific topics and things, issues that are going on in our culture right now. And it's important to have those conversations. But that's not what we're about. Those are not the things that define us. what defines us is Jesus and being zealous and sold out for him. And then all of those other things are things that, that he can like call us into, that he takes us deeper into. And so, so I loved that zeal could like go so many different ways and it can become this really big thing, but at its root, it's simple.
Another thing I think we've all talked about at various times together is, so you've got a simple essential thing, but then you've got a wide variety of different people. And you can look at that. You can see that in the people God has made around the world. Beautiful. And the cultures, the giftings, the personalities of different people.
Incredible.
And to me, that's a pretty big part of this too. It's the core things we share in common, but then approaching that in all kinds of different ways with different gifts.
Yeah.
And you get that, in the different leadership gifts too in the Bible. This is a whole conversation that has to happen. But, in Ephesians 4, Paul's like, Christ appointed apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers to lead the body and to build it up. And, often we don't have all of those. We just have teachers and pastors, right? But, evangelists are kind of weird, or prophets and apostles, like they don't even exist anymore, maybe, right? Like, but those are maybe all 5 of those are, gifts that God gave to lead the church, and we need all of them.
Yeah.
We need different cultures because God made us all, right?
Yeah.
With different strengths and weaknesses on top of all kinds of other gifts.
Yeah.
So just breaking it down into almost 2 ways, you've got like, there is more. There's these central things that we can be devoted to and like, let's go after them hard. That's one thing. There is more, right? That's one more thing. And then another thing is there is more like for different people to be coexisting and co-laboring. And, that those different gifts, it's not like one is dominant, but that those different people are working together and bringing their strengths and, looking out for each other's weaknesses, right? It doesn't make sense for one group to dominate. You miss out on so much. There is so much more that when you have, different people and skills and cultures and personalities working together, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to shout out the brother that if you see this, right, the white brother that said that's why we don't give theology to black people.
Oh man,
listen to the man. Listen to the man.
All right. Okay, there's an amazing podcast called Truth's Table, which is 3 African American totally fired up gals fighting for the righteousness and justice of God in many different ways. But they talk a lot about specifically the experience of minorities and women in church. And they had this guy named Glenn Bracey on the podcast. And he's a sociologist who's studied the explicit and implicit ways that racism happens in churches. And one crazy example that happened to him personally, he was working at, a majority white evangelical church. And he was working as a pastor. He kept having tension with the senior pastors. And ideas he was bringing, there was just pushback, right? And the tension kept building. And eventually they just had kind of a confrontation where one of the pastors was exasperated about an idea he had and said, "This is why we don't let black people make theology."
I see you, bro.
Yeah. Because they're too emotional. Just not recognizing the gifts and skills and strengths of different cultures. And I remember we talked about that and we had a problem,
Yeah.
And and then when you're, let's say, a minority, you have certain priorities and values, right? And you probably more often get the short end of the stick. And justice is something that you're going to notice more often, right?
Yeah.
And so, when we're making theology, everybody does need to be involved. Because different groups are going to round out the blind spots of other groups, right?
Yeah. And I think it comes back to who we're viewing God as, because like, so a remark like that, and on a very much like lesser scale, but similar-ish things being said about like women not being able to be leaders because of because of, you know, emotions and being emotional. It's like, I think that, yeah, it comes out of this place of this very, very narrow view of Jesus, of this like white stoic man. And it's such a westernized view of Jesus. And so if that's how you're viewing God, then when somebody is not fitting into that, then that's when there's pushback. And so this whole thing of people telling their stories of how they've gotten to know God, it's to help us to have that fuller picture of who Jesus is. Because when we've broken Jesus out of that, you know, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, stoic white man,
which actually wasn't,
which like doesn't make sense. Yeah, when we've broken him out of that, then like there's so much more room for all of these different things. And like, he made man and woman both in his own image. Therefore, logically following that through means that emotional, you know, like emotions come from him, stability comes from him, all of those things are from him, and they manifest themselves differently in different people. And that's why we need the body, because it's like he's like taken the fullness of who he is and then he broke it into little parts and put it in everybody so that we would need each other, because we can't fully know him without knowing and loving each other.
Yeah. Man, this has been unreal, just all over the map of what this ZEAL thing is about in lots of different ways. So I think we got some really good stuff on the table. Thank you guys so much for getting your thoughts out there and really jumping in on this and unpacking together what this thing is about. This has gotten so much better because of our conversations. So thank you. And kind of some next steps on this deal. I think I mentioned this earlier. There's a new email address now. You can reach out at create@zealpodcast.org. Get in touch. We can create stuff together to reflect God and learn how to follow him radically. You can still send emails to ask@zealpodcast.org if you had any questions we can answer next time. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe on wherever podcasts can be subscribed at, on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, those kinds of things. We're doing videos with all our podcasts here, so everything is on YouTube. Right. So please do join us, and looking forward to the next conversation. Bless up. Take
Bye.
care.